Daniel, as a fellow self-publisher, I feel like it's my mission to help other indie people in any way I can. You might almost say I'm on a mission from God.
Yeah. Nice transition. Yeah, yeah. So our classic movie review this week, the Blues Brothers. Yeah,
Yes, which I had never seen more than a few minutes of here and there before.
yeah. I'd only seen it once before in college, and I remember at the time thinking that it was really wacky and over the top. Uh,
Mhm.
and Upon second viewing, it's still wacky and over
It's
the top.
still really wacky and over the top. So you were not mistaken.
No.
Um, so based on the SNL sketch of the same title,
Mhm.
this stars the late great, the late great Jim Belushi and Dan Aykroyd as
Yeah. Well, it's John Belushi.
John Belushi. Damn it, I have seen more things with his less worthy brother than with
Yeah,
him. So I always,
that's all right. Yeah, it's easy. It's easy to do. Yeah.
before this, I had actually seen the misbegotten Blues Brothers 2000
Oh.
uh, featuring Jim. So that
Okay. Yeah.
I remember very little of it, aside from like it basically being a rehash of the first one with a different Belushi.
Oh.
Um,
Yeah. Yeah. I've never seen it. Yeah.
um, it had a nice soundtrack. Like I listened to that. We had that CD, and I listened to it a bunch of times. So it's
Hmm. Yeah.
um, it's in the style at least.
Yeah. Yeah. Um. Yeah. But yeah. So John Belushi plays Jake Blues, and Dan Aykroyd plays Elwood Blues. And the movie starts off where Jake is getting out of prison.
With
Uh,
Frank Oz of all people being the prison guard to give it back to him. It's
yeah.
like as and you kind of get the sense of the movie's comedy right away as he's handing his possessions back to him.
Yeah.
One wallet feature containing $23, one prophylactic unused, one prophylactic soiled.
Yeah. Yeah. And of course, they tell him to stay behind the yellow line, and
Yeah,
he's like, and then they say, "All right, sign here," and he does a lean forward.
yeah. Um, so this is a very much a they used to make comedy movies very differently in the late 70s and 80s, which
Yeah,
or in early 80s. And it's always an interesting flavor when you watch it for the first time, like Caddyshack, for example. Like I would say this is kind of in the vein of Caddyshack, although
yeah,
this has more of a through line than Caddyshack did.
yeah, yeah. Well, a lot of the same people that worked on this movie worked on Caddyshack, so yeah, that definitely jives. Yeah,
Yep, similar DNA.
yeah,
Um, but the larger storyline of this one is that, again, Jake has just gotten out of prison. His brother Elwood picks him up.
yeah,
and you get kind of a flavor of the action side of this movie early on, because like they're arguing about Elwood has traded away their old Cadillac for this old um,
uh,
surplus police car,
right, yeah,
and Jake is giving him the business for doing that,
yeah,
and they're waiting at a drawbridge, and Elwood just floors it, and they jump over the bridge
yeah,
at an impossible angle, and they
yeah,
make it. He's like, "See, it's got cop suspension, cop shock breaker or shock absorbers,
yeah,
cop engine. This thing can really go." So you
yeah,
very quickly establish that these guys are daredevils behind the wheel of the car and are very good at making things happen.
yes,
At least
yeah,
Elwood is.
and they're also very nonchalant when like catastrophes happen.
That's one of the funniest things in the movie is just
Yeah,
their their what do you call it? Their constantly no selling, like or very like deadpan delivery of lines in the face of crazy situations.
yeah, yeah. So they're driving. So they go to the orphanage where they grew up because Jake promised the nun working there that he would go see her when he got out of prison. He's like, "Well, yeah, I lied about it," and, and Elwood's like, "You can't lie to a nun."
Yeah. This is a very religious movie in its own way, which is kind of interesting.
Yeah, yeah. I will say the part where they're with the nun cracked me up.
Well, I was like, she's basically sliding around like a vampire in an old horror movie where they like clearly have her on rollers so she can just be
Yeah,
moved around without visibly like moving her legs.
yeah, yeah, and then the whole scene where they keep swearing and she keeps hitting him with the ruler, and then
Yeah.
and Elwood drops an F bomb and she breaks the ruler over his head.
Yeah. Um, Now, one interesting thing about this movie is that I believe it still has, it at the time had the Guinness Book of World Records for the most cars destroyed in a single movie.
Yeah,
And I believe it
yeah,
still holds that record,
I think it does. Yeah,
in so much as the people who do the Fast and the Furious movies are cowards and use CGI cars for their
exactly. Yeah,
nonsense action scenes.
yeah. Jeez.
Like I write it up, and they got themselves like 60 or so. I think it was like a hundred. I think it was like, yeah, they got themselves like 100 surplus police cars, and they destroyed 60 of them in the course of making the movie or something crazy like that.
That makes sense. Yeah,
This was a very expensive movie for the time, like $25 million budget, and they were over budget.
yeah, yeah.
They're lucky that this thing was a beloved classic.
Yeah, yeah, yes. Uh, but yeah, so they have to come up with the whole plot with the movie is the orphanage is being taken over by the county, and they got to get $5,000 to the tax assessor, or by a certain. I think it was like a week or something like that.
Yeah, they had 7 days.
Yeah, they had 7 days to get $5,000 to the county tax assessor, and so they're like, well, how they're trying to figure out how they're going to do that, and
We're on a mission from God.
we're not mission from God. Yeah, they go to a church where the pastor is James Brown.
Yeah, this thing was full of cameos from blues and R&B greats.
Yeah, you had you had James Brown. Shaka Khan was one of the singers in the choir, or the
Hmm.
lead soloist.
So yeah, you had
Um,
Aretha Franklin.
Aretha Franklin, Ray Charles.
Yeah,
Uh,
and the old gentleman who had helped them out at the orphanage growing up and taught them the blues, he was a big name too.
yeah, I'm trying to remember who he was, but yeah. So they get uh, they get the divine inspiration to get their band back together, put on this big concert, and raise the money that way. And so then they go off and they meet with their different band members, and of course some of them take more convincing than others. But then like the
It was Cab Calloway who was the
okay,
other big cameo.
okay, yeah. And yeah, so like one of the scenes was like the scene with Aretha Franklin. Uh, they're trying to convince one. Was he like, what was he? Their saxophone player or trumpet? I can't
I
remember.
forget what his instrument was. Uh, you know what's very funny about this, Daniel?
Yeah,
You could technically lob the complaints that we lobbed against Rebel Moon against this, insofar as the first part of the movie is mostly them just assembling the team, and then those members of the team don't really do a whole lot after they're assembled besides play their instruments in the background.
yeah. Well, but it works here though because
Yes, it does. It just struck me as kind of an amusing parallel as I'm watching it.
yeah.
It's like, like technically, it's not like we're having long conversations where we find about the character of the bass player versus the saxophonist or whatnot.
Right, yeah. I just like when Elwood says, we're on a mission from God, and Aretha Franklin was like, "Don't you blaspheme in here!"
Yeah. Uh, and Ninja is correct. They
Yes,
were
yeah,
hunted by Carrie Fisher throughout the movie, who opens up her hunting of them by pulling out a rocket-propelled grenade launcher and firing several rockets at them.
yeah. and, yeah, and then yeah, they survive, and they just kind of get up and dust their dust their jackets off, whatever, and they're like, "All right, whatever."
Yeah, just constant. It's a very zany movie, but
Yeah.
it kind of remembers like so. So you know who like the funniest actor is who actually very rarely acted funny
Who is that?
was Leslie Nielsen. Like
Yeah.
the reason they picked him for Airplane, and that was his first comedic role, which is funny because after that, that's basically all he did was comedic roles.
Yeah. Yeah.
The reason he worked in most of his movies was because he always played everything very deadpan.
Oh yeah.
Like he was just still acting like a 50s leading man, just in a ridiculous situation, but he never drew attention to that ridiculous situation.
Yeah. Yeah. Airplane. Yeah. Yeah. Surely you can't be serious. I am serious. And don't call me Shirley.
Right. Or things like the Naked Gun or Police Squad wouldn't work if he was like, ironically, like, man, this situation sure is zany.
Yeah.
Like and it's a similar sort of comedy here where like they keep getting into these ridiculous situations, and it's never like, why did that explosion just happen? Or yeah, why did the building just collapse? Like, well, building collapsed.
Yeah. All right. Whatever.
Yep, just climb out and get back to it.
Yeah. Or the famous scene where they're driving through the mall and they're just like well, there's a lot of space in this mall.
Yeah. Uh, yeah, I had seen that scene out of context because in high school I had this teacher who would like show us little bits of American film just to like, and he's the one who told me first that oh yeah, this was the most expensive film made at the time, and or the most expensive car chases. They just destroyed that mall. Like
Oh yeah. Yeah.
I'm guessing that they made up the money on that by selling the advertising space to like, hey, J.C. Penney, you want to be seen prominently in this scene where they're destroying this mall?
Yeah, yeah, and then and Toys R Us and yeah.
Yeah, bunch of little places.
Yeah, and I had a bit of a Mandela effect with that scene
Oh,
because yeah, so the part where they're driving to the car dealership
hmm
and Elwood says, "Oh, the new Oldsmobiles are in early." For some reason, I thought they were Cadillacs, not Oldsmobiles.
hmm. Yeah. Well, they were talking about a Cadillac earlier in the movie, so I guess you got some wires crossed.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, that must be it.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah. The other thing is that I was like really taken aback that that wasn't the climax chase scene in the movie. That was before they'd even recruited their first person, and they were
yeah,
having this balls to the wall, destroying them all
yeah,
car chase scene.
yeah. It had a couple of cameos with the cops driving. Like one, Harold Ramis was one,
Yeah, I noticed him. Yeah.
and then John Landis, the director, was one of the cops too.
Ha. Um, yeah. So like, to not just go into like blow by blow because we could just sit here
Oh
talking
yeah,
about all the
yeah,
funny scenes.
yeah,
Yeah. I mean, but it's it's a, so once they it's very much like it's not a road comedy exactly. It's like a comedy of errors, I guess, where they just keep getting into these ridiculous situations,
yeah, yeah,
uh, and
yeah, yeah,
and it keeps escalating more or less,
yeah. So they keep getting more and more in trouble, and to the point where yeah, like,
like a whole police
yeah, the police and the military are after
and
them.
the Nazis
Yes,
and a country western band
and a country western band. Yeah, well, and Carrie Fisher too.
and Carrie Fisher, yes,
Yeah,
hot off of Star Wars: A New Hope.
yes,
And it's like, okay, how are they going to get? How the hell are they possibly going to get out of this one?
yeah, yeah. And hey, Will, good to see you, man.
Hey, hey, how's it going?
But yeah, it's the other cameo that it was who was great was John Candy.
Oh yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
All the
he's one of the like cops that's trying to chase him down, and they have the whole crash scene where like their car ends up in a truck.
yeah.
And he's the two cops are in the front seat and he's in the back, and he's like he looks at the one cop, he's like, "Hi, can you hand me the mic?" He's like, "Hey, this is car 55. We're in a truck."
and the and also this is, I guess this was earlier on in John Candy's career. He didn't have his contractually allowed boogieing out to a classic rock or blues song in this
That's
movie.
true. Yeah,
I
yeah,
guess there
no.
was, I guess that was Belushi's thing. This movie.
Yeah, yeah.
Um, so it's, yeah, it's just this crazy escalation. And it's hard. It's on again. We could be here blow by blowing it for
Yeah, yeah.
like a half hour. Um, so like I would say that for like most comedies, there are jokes that work and jokes that don't, jokes that aged well and jokes that didn't.
Mhm.
Like there's a subplot where Elwood runs into the supermodel Twiggy and picks her up at a gas station.
Oh yeah.
Who I only knew it was Twiggy because they identified her in the credits.
Uh,
And I said, that is a name that I know, but like I imagine it would be like if they made a modern movie, like okay, it would be like a '90s movie where he randomly ran into Carmen Electra and picked her up at a gas station, or a
okay.
2010s movie where he ran into a Kardashian and picked her up and got her to agree to meet up at a hotel and then stood her up.
Oh, okay. Oh, yeah,
So
it's
like
that
in
equivalent.
terms of
Yeah.
fame. Now
Okay.
I don't know that she's necessarily the same sort of playboyish nature as that. I think she might have just been like a just supermodel. So maybe oh, who was the woman from Bedazzled?
Oh, Elizabeth Hurley.
No, was it Elizabeth? No, not Elizabeth Hurley. I know. Okay, Elizabeth Hurley was in Bedazzled. Who is that one really famous supermodel from the '90s? Who
Oh, Cindy Crawford.
Cindy Crawford. It'd be like it might
Okay.
have been more like meeting Cindy Crawford in the '90s,
Okay.
but
Yeah.
it was a reference from before my time. So it's like it didn't. I was like, I didn't go anywhere. Oh, the joke was that he picked up this international supermodel and
Oh, and stood her up.
and
Yeah.
stood her up. So like there were a few jokes in there that didn't quite land for me, and
Yeah.
I would say like a lot of these '80s flavored sketch comedy things. Again, like some bits will work for you, some bits won't. There are some very creative and funny bits in this, though.
Yeah, there are. Yeah.
Like a lot of them.
Yeah, there are. Yeah. Um. Although I will say, uh, part of uh, part of the problem I had with it is the climax. Like it was just a little too zany and over the top, very much like John Landis's previous movie before this, which was Animal House. Um,
You know, in college I rented Animal House,
yeah.
and I only got like half an hour into it before I stopped, and then I ended up returning it
Oh.
because you know limited rentals at the time.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, the climax of that movie is them crashing the homecoming parade, and
Mm.
it was just really zany and over the top. I mean, there's a part at the end, part in there where Belushi, I mean, he's dressed up like a pirate. you know.
Yeah, and this was a similar flavor of zany.
Yeah.
Um, so yeah, like yeah, there were bits where their car was just completely breaking the laws of physics and plausibility with the stunts it was pulling off.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. Yeah. Or the scene where the Nazis' car is like somehow like thousands of feet in the air and it just drops.
Yeah, like uh, yeah, it gets kind of Looney Tunes.
Yeah.
Um, the other thing I'll say is that
It's a German song.
nice
All right.
reference.
Yes.
But the other thing I'll say is that I think that I'm just not a, Belushi fan
Mm.
because I don't know, like when he was doing his deadpan stuff, it was great. When he was like really trying to swing for the comedy fences, I was left a little bit cold. Like when he was begging for his life in front of Carrie Fisher.
Oh yeah. Yeah. It's funny. I actually talked to my parents about this. They weren't really the biggest Belushi fans. And because for a lot of the reasons you were just saying, like they just, most of his comedy is physical. If
Hmm.
you think about it, like like in like where it's like his eye, like his expressions, his eye movement, and
Yeah. Well, the other thing is that he's one of those actors who kind of comes off as okay. Like I just actually bring up John Candy.
Hmm.
De- Depending on the role, John Candy, you get the impression he would either be really fun and lovable behind the scenes, or he'd be a complete asshole. Uh,
Yeah, yeah.
like you could see it going either way. I just had this feeling that if you met Belushi, you would just have like you'd run into him in asshole mode. Like he doesn't, you don't really see like the part of him that would be warm and cuddly.
Yeah, that that's probably how he was. Yeah. Well, the other, of course, the big problem with him was his drug addiction.
Right.
You probably didn't know what you were going to get when he was high. You know.
Yeah. Which it's. I remember in King of the Hill between John Candy, him, and Chris Farley. You had you had Bobby Hill going, "Hey, look, Dad, I'm not going to get into drugs. My goal is to be the first fat comedian to reach 40."
Oh, jeez.
I was like, yeah, that there was this trend for a while there where
Yeah, yeah,
you got big in comedy and you were kind of chubby and you developed a drug problem and
yeah,
it undid you at the peak of your power.
yeah. Although in John Candy's case, he did make it past the age of 40, but
Oh, did
not
he? Okay,
yeah, 42 or 43.
okay, yeah, but
Yeah,
not by much.
not by much. Yeah,
Not much older than we are now, actually.
yeah. Oh, jeez.
But so yeah, it's like so I would say like the scenes where he's really trying to give it his all doesn't quite work it for me, but where he's doing the deadpan thing with Aykroyd is always great in this movie.
Oh, yeah, yeah, yeah. They were able to play off of each other really well.
Yeah, they had great chemistry.
Yeah, it kind of makes me wonder what Ghostbusters would have been like if Belushi hadn't passed away and had done that movie with Aykroyd.
Yeah, he would have taken Bill Murray's spot. I guarantee it.
Oh, yeah, yeah, yeah. It was the original three Ghostbusters was supposed to be, it was Aykroyd, Belushi, and Eddie Murphy.
Oh, well, that would
Yeah,
have been really different.
yeah, it would have been very different. Yeah,
Um, yeah. So to move over to Aykroyd, Aykroyd is kind of always the guy doing the deadpan delivery in all situations.
yeah,
So he's definitely playing to his strengths here.
yeah, yeah, yeah. He uh, what's interesting, you mentioning Belushi in real life. I've heard about Aykroyd that how he is in real life he's really not that funny. He's just kind of normal.
That sounds reasonable
Yeah,
because like he is like a living straight man.
yeah, he is. Yeah,
So I guess he's in that league of actors who just kind of play themselves,
yeah, pretty much.
and it works.
Yeah,
Just got to give him the right role. But
yeah,
yeah, it's like at the time, like so you always have the ending of the movie in your mind as you're thinking back on it.
hmm,
It's like you said, like it went a little bit too wacky at the end.
yeah,
So I was like coming away from it on when I watched it on Saturday with like, okay, that was a C movie in my mind.
yeah,
But yeah, having thought about it more, there's like a lot of great scenes, like Ray Charles just opening fire on a kid to keep him from to keep him from pickpocketing something or to keep him from shoplifting something.
right, yeah,
Um, just a lot of the great deadpan scenes with them.
yeah,
Carrie Fisher on a one woman vendetta against Belushi.
yeah,
Um, I would call the Nazis an unnecessary part of the movie. Like that just kind of added to the over zaniness of the end, unfortunately.
yeah, yeah.
Although it was satisfying watching them almost run over a whole bunch of them.
Yeah, yeah, that part was really cool. Yeah, and would play well with today's audience.
Yes, I think most everyone can agree with that.
Yeah,
I think my favorite two. If I was to had pick like favorite scenes, I really liked the part in the country bar with the classic line. "We got both kinds of music here, country and western."
yeah, yeah,
And actually, now that we think about it, so this was taking place in like the Chicago area. This is another movie that we've reviewed recently in the early '80s that had a major scene of revolving around a country western bar. So maybe those were more of a phenomena back then than we are taking it, or than we were expecting.
Yeah, yeah. I'm really surprised. Yeah, I'm surprised by that. Yeah, yeah, I didn't think country western bars were that big in the '80s, but yeah, yeah, like you said, we've had two movies now where that was the case. So,
So either they were a big thing in the '80s, or it's one of those things where there just happens to be a few that the screenwriters knew about, so they kept coming up.
yeah,
Like how in the early '90s, man, there was so much humor about sporks. Like somebody in Hollywood just decided that was the funniest thing ever, was the fact that you had a combination spoon and fork, and that was just all over the place.
yeah,
And then the world got used to it.
yeah. Yeah,
But that's either here nor there.
yeah,
So I'd say this is a comedy classic. If I compare it to its contemporaries like Caddyshack, this is much more of a through line and is much funnier than Caddyshack. Caddyshack, aside from the Dangerfield scenes, really just left me cold.
yeah. In the case of Caddyshack, you kind of have to be a golf enthusiast to enjoy that movie, or at least
Yeah,
know enough about golf to understand it.
yeah, true. Yeah, it's like the best scenes from that one um, were probably in Caddyshack. The best parts were the um, was Dangerfield, and
Mhm.
then also who played the groundskeeper?
Bill Murray.
Bill Murray, right? He was the
Mhm.
best part of that one too, because like a lot of quotable lines from that one, and there's also a lot of lines that people quote all the time in Blues Brothers. That
Yeah,
that's where that's from. Okay,
yeah, yeah,
like in
yeah,
country and western.
yeah. Yeah, we're on a mission from Gad.
Right. Well, we got a half tank of gas, a pack of cigarettes. It's dark out. There are cops all over the place, and we're wearing
Thanks.
sunglasses.
Hit it.
Yeah, yeah. So yeah, I think I think I'm glad I watched this.
Yeah.
Definitely an educational experience.
Yes, indeed. Yeah. Yeah, yeah, and yeah, I was kind of like you after I watched thought, oh, it's kind of an average movie. But then as I started thinking about those scenes, I'm like, okay, it was pretty funny. Yeah. Um. Oh, interesting little tidbit. Did you recognize the guy at the tax assessor's office when they were paying when they're giving them the money?
No, I didn't.
Steven Spielberg.
Oh, okay. Shows you the pull they had back then.
Yeah. Well, yeah, yeah. Spielberg and Landis were really good friends
Ah,
until the Twilight Zone movie. Yeah. but yeah. To get off of that morbid note, yeah, check this movie out. It's on Netflix.
and that brings us to the end of our program.